What is going on, Mo? What is happening, Mo? So, we are out here at another episode of a late night at Dames. And essentially, I wanted to kind of just chat with you guys really quickly about preparation for success and what that truly means for musicians today. So, if you're interested in conversations like this, make sure you hit the like button for everybody else to see this content, and then also hit the subscribe button so you can see my newest content. And if you can hear in the background, this is actually July 3rd, so they're already blowing up fireworks. It's going to be like this probably for a good weekend, but we still trudge through. So when we think of preparation for like musicians, a lot of the time we think of the gig, the show, or the performance, right? And so the performance is usually probably what, like the last 10 or 5% of what a musician is really working on. So I like to really explain the performance in a way of like let's say if you were an athlete, like the actual match or the actual race or the actual, day of the event, right? Whereas practice and things like that is your scrimmages or, you just hitting the gym and recovery and things like that. But the idea behind it is usually thrown to the side for many musicians because of convenience or just the fact that they don't have like a plan in place. And that's where preparation is really going to shine for a lot of musicians, right? So if you're a person who's like, struggling with maybe like catching up with your skill set, catching up with what you know as far as you can sing the parts you want to play, or you can think them, but your fingers can't make them happen. Like you can't make the instrument do the thing, right? So there has to be a bit of preparation in order to fulfill the solution that that problem has, right? So one of the things that is going to be a biggest hindrance for you is time management. It's going to be figuring out when to solve this issue, when to work on it, how long to work on it, and when you are working on it, how effective will it be, right? So things like scales for singers, intonation, breathing exercises. If you're a horn player, maybe it could be the maintenance of your instrument. Maybe you need to learn how your instrument works mechanically so that way you can play it better, you know? So there's a lot of different things that you could look into that are very specific for what you're working on as a musician. So, and some of the things that we kind of overlook as well when we're thinking about performances is the kind of human connection, connecting with people, the audience, managers, networks, and stuff like that. And so you can honestly, you can do like a audition or interview with people, and because you kind of understand, the skill set that you bring and the way you can fit into the culture, people are a little more receptive to working with you than you having like all the skills in the world. You can play, everything amazing on your instrument, but people don't like working with you. So there's a lot of different things you have to really worry about. So, especially practicing, practicing is one of those things that kind of works the same way. So when you're practicing with others, you definitely want to be able to, communicate clearly and things like that. And you also want to have like clear goals and things in place. So let's say like when you're going into practice, some people they'll just kind of like play around. They'll play their favorite song and just kind of like jam, if you will. You just play one song or a part of a song and just kind of do that for time, and then when they get tired, they're done and they call that practice. In a sense, yeah, you did practice, but you didn't necessarily achieve anything. You get what I'm saying? So let's say if you took the same instance, but you were like, all right, I want to practice my scales for 30 minutes. That's way more effective and more productive as far as achieving something, right? Rather than just spending time playing. Because even if you're just jamming, right, you can still make that something where you're being a little more productive. Let's say you want to jam, right? You just want to play. You can say, I want to jam, but I want to, you know, play all out, like full max. And that can be like kind of like a dry run for a show that you have coming up. Or maybe you're trying to really feel how the dynamics of a song truly sound. Like maybe fortissimo is a little bit too loud for what the piece calls for. So there's a lot of different ways you can use your practice time to be more effective. And again, the best way to start doing that is to plan it ahead. Even if it's just something like, having a whiteboard, putting it in your phone, a sticky note, just saying like on Tuesday when I practice piano, I'm going to work on this one song, my chords and my left hand, you know, movements, things like that. You can be very specific or you can be kind of broad, but the key is to just kind of have the habit of making a plan for your practices. The other thing you can work on is kind of like the physical, or not the physical, but more so body your body as like the tool for your instrument or your performances, because some people, they have stage fright, honestly. Like they just, they get nervous. You can do things like breathing exercises, visualization techniques, and my favorite is to just kind of play music and get into the mode of like your favorite song, maybe your favorite energy of a song and things like that. I know one guy, he plays his favorite songs and just kind of like walks around the house and just like reenacts the music, I guess, that he's feeling. But these kind of things, they help you. They help you kind of like shake out the nervousness, get you comfortable again to where when it is time to perform, you'll be, okay. Or maybe it could just be something as simple as just playing the audio tracks of the performance you have coming up, just so you can get your mind wrapped around what's coming up, very simple things. You can also do things like just sitting back before your practice. Like I said, you can just sit back, and instead of actually playing an instrument, you can just work on the maintenance of it. Maybe your keyboard needs to be dusted. Maybe you need to go into the hard drive and organize some files and things like that, so sheet music looks a little bit more organized, or maybe your guitar needs its truss rod adjusted. There's a lot of things you could fit into your practice time that aren't necessarily about playing the instrument that can still be effective. Because when we're thinking about being a musician, right, many people think like, oh, you're just going to play an instrument in front of people playing music or things like that. But really, you're like a Swiss Army knife when you're a musician. You have to be, of course, good at your instrument, but you also have to be charismatic to where if people hear that you're good and they compliment you, they get something that they like from that experience, either a handshake or just, a feel good moment. And then at the other end of it, when something happens with your instrument or if new technology comes out, you have to be up on that as far as how it's going to benefit you and be effective in making you competitive with other musicians. So you have to be up on computer technology, um, basic engineering. Like you got to know how tools work. So maybe you need to fix and tune an instrument once. And then you have to also be aware of theory, sound theory, music theory, understanding how frequencies work and things like that. Like you don't have to know these things, but you should know these things when it comes to being the greatest musician that you could be, right? And then on top of that, then we get into all the human aspects like your health and learning new languages and things like that. So it's just trying to be effective, and being ready when it comes to any opportunities that pop up, because there are opportunities that are outside of playing an instrument that these skills will help you get, like being an engineer or a venue, or maybe knowing how to market, or maybe teach people how to play their instrument and things like that. So there's a lot of ways you can work it out, but without preparation you're not really going to know how it works. And so that's one of the main things. So now I want to move into more of another aspect of preparing for success, and it's really your lifestyle as a musician. And so the main thing you're going to really run into as a musician with your lifestyle is consumption, meaning like spending money. Like a lot of people have a huge issue with um overspending on eating, overspending on just liabilities in general, like buying instruments and cables and stuff sounds nice, but if it doesn't really make sense for your budget, it's not really going to work for the long run. And then another thing that many people mess up in their lifestyle is their network, like who they're keeping around, because some people that you keep around, their mindset isn't really beneficial for some of the things we're working on. Like if you need to make time for your practice on your scales, but somebody is urging you to go hang out at the beach instead, then it's like they might not be in the right mindset for what your goals are, right? So it's really just trying to like customize what it is you're trying to get to, and then reverse engineering how you're going to get there. So the next thing you can get into is kind of like focusing on your body, right? And your health. And that's one of the ways that will honestly help your business overall. It'll become more of like a calling card, if you will, or business card, right? So when people see you, you'll look nice, you'll look better, you'll look attractive, right? So people will want to do business, but then at the same time, people will also benefit from just being around you, because people like being around nice looking people, and they help nicer looking people. If you dress nice, people will treat you better and things like that, right? And so a part of that will be your nutrition. So if you're eating better, the food you eat will affect what happens in your body, and from your bones to your muscles, your hair, then deeper inside your organs and even your mind in some cases, right? So once you really understand what you're eating, how much of it you're eating, and what it's really doing to your body, you can make different decisions. So this is where I try to encourage people to track their food in terms of their fitness goals. So if you're a person, let's say you're a singer or a vocalist, right? And you're going on stage, let's say, in a gig soon, but you want to look better on stage. Well, you got to figure out, well, what got you looking the way you look now to where you think you need a change? And then if you take a reverse engineering mindset and you look back, and if you have been tracking your food, you can kind of see what has been causing what's um, making you want to change. So something like, let's say if you have a little bit too much belly fat, right? Well, if you're a person, as most musicians, you're sitting in a seat most times. Maybe you're driving to gigs here and there. You're sitting in meetings, or you're sitting in studio sessions. And then when you do make time for fitness activity, it's probably like an hour a day, or maybe an hour and a half if you consider like whatever other activities you're doing, right? But the real point that I'm making here is that it's not intense enough to combat all the other things that's going on in your life, right? And so this is where you're going to have to, again, go back to tracking and just be like, all right, so what is happening throughout the day? And the tracking comes through scheduling, and that's your time management. So if you make time for the task that gets you closer to your goal becomes a whole lot easier to reach. So if you want to look better on stage and you want to fit in your clothes and feel better and things like that, let's figure out what task would get us closer there. And one that pops in my head would be like walking for like 30 minutes a day at like a medium pace or an intense pace for you, right? 30 minutes a day. If you can do that, then you will automatically see benefits from that because you're doing that every day, right? And then there's other things you can do. And, if you want more, you can definitely let me know in the comments and we'll have that conversation and explore it all. But essentially, there are things that you can just prepare yourself with your time management that can just get the job done without thinking. So now that we can figure out ways to make our body look better, make our body feel better, and things like that, we have time management better. We're planning for these things. We're figuring out what we can do to make things better, and we're making perfect slots in our time schedules to get it done. The next thing we got to think about is, of course, our instrument care and things like that. So, part of instrument care is an investment. Like, you're going to have to really think about, like, all right, if I'm a alto sax player, do I have somebody that can fix, keys and pads and things like that? Do I have a retailer I can go to that has the supplies I need for maybe reeds and things like that? So there's a lot of things that may go wrong with your instrument that you want to be prepared for, right? And a big part of it is going to be knowing what can go wrong with your instrument and then having the proper things set up. So you don't necessarily need your own workshop, but you need access to one. That's key. That's key. And you need to be able to afford to fix the problem. So a part of it is going to be investing in your finances and then investing in yourself with those finances. So one of the ways that you can do that is try to either take the money you make from your job or your gigs and things like that and put percentages away in your accounts and then use that money to basically budget for maintenance, care for your instrument. Maybe you need cleanings. Maybe you need somebody to, make a big repair and things like that. So that's going to be key. And then the very next thing you're going to need, of course, is insurance on everything. The insurance part of it is just to make sure that things are in place for you in case things just go completely to crap, right? So if you have a keyboard and you're on a flight to, let's say, 2 states over for a gig, and you fly over there, it's a quick little flight, but they lose your keyboard and luggage. Well, if you have insurance, then you can get that either replaced or get something of similar value. But if you have no insurance, you're out of pocket, you're screwed. And things like that could be covered. You can make, clauses and things like that. You can develop insurance kind of policies depending on whatever works specifically for you as a business, or maybe you play an instrument just for fun, but you really want to make sure you're prepared so that way you can continue being a musician. That's the key thing, right? And so big part of it again is going to be budgeting and making sure you're investing in yourself, but you also want to understand that there are some things that you buy as a musician that kind of go with being a musician that don't make sense as far as your goal. So like something like the kind of food you enjoy, you want to really think about that because that may be too expensive or just inefficient. So if you're on the go musician and your go to is like gas station food most of the time, it's fine, but depending on what you get out of the gas station will determine what you get from the gas station food. So if you're a person who needs to be energetic and upbeat, but you want to get chips and candy, it's not really going to help you. If you're a person that needs to look really good on stage, but you're always buying things that are like aging you in a sense, then it's not really going to help you. So you have to be conscious of this, but you also can be decisive, meaning like again, reverse engineer what it is. If you want long hair, pretty nails, and things like that, then eat the foods that help you do that. If you want to, have nice glasses and jewelries and cool shoes and things like that, then you have to invest in yourself to be able to do that. But that's essentially how I look at everything as far as preparing for success and things like that. And there's layers to it because when you get to networking with people and trying to match their schedules with yours, it just kind of multiplies. But if this was interesting, make sure you hit the like button and share with your friends and your fellow musicians so we can grow. And I will see you guys tomorrow night at a late night at Dames.